Heath Brown at the extreme left of the screen took the hint from his lane allocation and burst into the lead within the first 500 metres. The kilometre course is regarded as a flat-out sprint, but Heath says he knew he had the race won just after halfway and slowed down.
I knew I had to start well, and after that the race just seemed to just roll on from there. Good start helps.
Even though he put the brakes on, he still finished just 3 seconds over the gold-winning Olympic time. Was Shane Suska, who in the ladies' final, Michelle Miller opened her shoulders and blitzed the opposition. Miller is part of the Institute of Sport team, and the daily training certainly proved its worth. Today's events are the first in a series of regattas between the AIS and the New South Wales Academy of Sport. For the AIS, it's a yardstick on their development. For the Academy members, it's a chance to impress national selectors and join an elite development squad. The sprints continue tomorrow at Dora Creek in the morning with the 500 and 200 metre events.
The year started out badly for wool producers with low prices, the market hitting a rock bottom in April of 389 cents per kilo. The industry was in crisis, father figure of the wool industry Sir William Gunn suggesting a radical rescue plan. Sir William's plan didn't quite take off, but as the year went by, things started to improve, with perhaps the greatest advance in decades, the implementation of the Garno Wool Report. There has been across-the-board approval of the report and it's seen as a light at the end of the tunnel, but by no means an immediate tonic. Wool producers will lose on average $35,000 each for the year. Season 93 is expected to be the best for wheat producers in the last 10 years. For northern growers, it's predicted quantity will be up 50%, though quality may not be great. There's been more intervention on the world market from the Americans, their subsidised crops lowering the international price. One major concern for the Australians, the American grab at the Chinese malting barley market. For the average grain producer, is still a financial heartache. It's predicted they will each lose $8,000 this year. And to one rural industry that you could make a good dollar in 1993. Industry experts have been surprised by the strength of the cattle market this year. Overall, for domestic and export cattle, prices were up 15% on last year. In export markets, the low Aussie dollar was a great help. The American meat import law was expected to be a major headache, but that wasn't the case. Also, the hormone growth promotants debate has settled after Aussie exporters initially were angry about reams of paperwork to sell cattle to the EEC. The industry took the demands on board and have made the system work, saving an $80 million market. It's good to see some people can fit in with governments, make the system work and make a living too.
It was a glittering affair at the Belmont 16-foot sailing club last night. The awards honour the region's best sporting men and women, and there was no shortage of contenders. In recognition for their talents in disabled sports, a special scholarship award was shared by swimmer Joseph Walker and all-rounder Dean Papworth. Junior Sportsperson of the Year went to swimmer Andrew Cairns from Elibana, now ranked 4th in the world in the 16 years 200-metre butterfly event. But everyone had been waiting for the big announcement, the job going to federal member for Shortland, Peter Morris. The award caps off a successful year for Hewson, following his recent win in the World Cherub Sailing Championships held in Western Australia. The Hunter Rowing Club's Cox 4 men's crew took out the C-grade event in the State Association's major regatta in Sydney yesterday. Not bad for a relatively young club. Based at Spears Point, Hunter Rowing has played host to a number of competitions. Today, teams from across the Central District competed in the 43-event regatta. Hoping to foster the sport among young rowers, the major clubs have taken high school teams under their wing, most competing for the first time today, despite a few hiccups. Meanwhile, little athletes from across the Central Coast competed in the Zone Championships at Toukley today. With the emphasis on having fun, points are awarded for performance in each event.
The person who wins the 100 metres may not necessarily win the overall point score. They've got to basically gather points, whether it be 100 metres, shot put, discus, hurdles.
And with the big games only 7 years away, it could be the perfect training ground for future champions. The Hunter Rowing Club's Cox 4 men's crew took out the C-grade event in the State Association's major regatta in Sydney yesterday. Not bad for a relatively young club. Based at Spears Point, Hunter Rowing has played host to a number of competitions. Today, teams from across the Central District competed in the 43-event regatta. Hoping to foster the sport among young rowers, the major clubs have taken high school teams under their wing, most competing for the first time today, despite a few hiccups.
Move over, Hunter! Where you going?
Meanwhile, little athletes from across the Central Coast competed in the Zone Championships at Toukley today. With the emphasis on having fun, points are awarded for performance in each event.
The overall emphasis today is really to get in and have a go. The person who wins the 100 metres may not necessarily win the overall point score. They've got to basically gather points, whether it be 100 metres, shot put, discus, hurdles. It's, as it says, it's a multi-event.
And with the big games only 7 years away, it could be the perfect training ground for future champions.
It was a peaceful protest, with Conservation Minister George Torres disarming members of the Wilderness Society with a handshake. Forests are home to Australia's native animals. It's trees the Wilderness Society wants governments to conserve, not just historic buildings.
And he's not conserving wilderness areas and our natural heritage.
The organisation points to logging at Dewar, 200 kilometres south of Canberra.
No one takes into account the enormous area in the southeast that's already taken up as vacant Crown land or national parks. And that area, in fact, really pales into insignificance the area that's still under logging.
Inside the official business of opening Newcastle's Police Station Museum. Built in 1861, the cells were used to hold people awaiting court hearings.
When the rule of law was the rum core and the police lock-up cells. And the fact that they're here intact, I think, provides a remarkable window into our society of the turn of the earlier century.
Remarkably, these archaic cells were in use until a decade ago. The exercise yard with its open toilet and bath affording no privacy. A rare exhibit, a padded cell with a poignant plea from someone who crossed the thin blue line.
That is quite unique, and you probably won't find another cell like that in Australia, still existing.
An exhibition entitled When Newcastle Was New coincides with the opening of the building as a museum.
Back in 1977, we was having kind of like a scramble, and it was on the second hole at the Steelworks, and we marked the ball on the fairway and hit, and then it was my turn. We had a little bit of a gallery with us, so I was probably 20 meters from the hole, so I just said, oh, what the heck, I'll just hit this. And I got up on the green and got on the side like that and rolled in the cup.
Having swapped their greens for whites, Army went on the attack, sending Singleton into bat as they attempted to post back-to-back wins in the prestigious annual match. The base commandants versus Singleton mares clash had its origins in the late 1970s to foster closer links between the town and its defence facility. Going into today's game, the overall number of wins was equal. Singleton got off to a rough start, losing 3 for 29. However, they managed to amass a total of 104 from their allotted 24 overs. In reply, Army were dismissed in their final over for a score of 98. The spoils of victory for Singleton, the return of the Lone Pine Trophy.
This was the group's last dress rehearsal before heading to Sydney for the show this weekend. By then, makeup should be just right and the routine perfected. About 30 students from the Hunter will be putting on a tap dancing routine along with schools from across the state.
Oh, there'll be a bit of chaos and a lot of ranting and raving, but eventually it's going to come together and be a huge, spectacular show, I think.
The Sydney School Spectacular starts on Friday night.
A lunchtime meeting with members of Newcastle Business Club saw the renowned author and long-time supporter of a republic use his extensive knowledge to put the debate into perspective. One point Thomas Keneally hammered home: our constitution requires a referendum to decide the question of a republic.
It can only be done by a majority of Australians in a majority of states voting for it. And because it's a big emotional question and a large psychological question, probably the referendum shouldn't be held until there's a majority in all states.
He used the development of Australia's defence policy and the powers given to both state and federal courts as examples of how Australians have gained more sovereignty over the past 60 years. Keneally believes debate on the subject should now be placed in the hands of the people.
I think that there'll be a vigorous debate over the next the remainder of this decade, and that will be a very good thing because people will learn a lot from it.
As to when we'll become citizens of the Australian Republic, Thomas Keneally has this prediction.
I believe it will happen by 2001, but many people don't, and people ought to be calm about it because it can't get up without a majority of electors in a majority of states.
Following the success of the company's production of Macbeth, Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream will be staged next year. But that's just one of 7 works.
We try to cover a lot of different theatrical styles and perhaps leaning a little more heavily toward drama than we did this year. However, there still are some light and bright numbers in there to keep everybody happy.
At Fort Scratchley in January, they'll keep children happy with the Hans Christian Andersen classic The Emperor's New Clothes. And for the adults, after the success of Table for One, more plays set in the nervous 90s. In March, the world premiere of Choices. In April, David Williamson's Brilliant Lies. And in July, Diving for Pearls. The company continues its commitment to local writers, featuring 4 Novocastrian plays.
We ran a studio workshop this year on playwriting, and the response was great, and also the writing was terrific, and out of that we've managed to get 4 plays that we can do in a season we're calling Newcastle Short, so there'll be 4 one-act plays.
In November, the focus switches to the other side of the world with Sam Shepard's True West.
We've not really tackled anything American here for a while, and Sam Shepard is such a good writer, won the Pulitzer Prize a number of times, so we thought True West is a good play to start with.
NBN News. Latest studies reveal domestic violence affects 1 in 5 marriages, but author Cindy Kaplan says there's another form of abuse just as devastating.
With emotional abuse, you're talking about a much more subtle form of psychological battering, where the weapons are words and not bullets or blows. But in actual fact, the damage to a woman's self-esteem and confidence is even more acute.
Coming to the rescue is Lifesavers, a woman's guide to survival and self-esteem.
Essentially, it's a book to help women who might be trapped in either abusive relationships or unhappy marriages and feel that they don't have enough confidence to do something about it, either to get help to improve their relationship, or if it's past improving and past saving, to get the courage to leave.
In an era where the modern woman is forging ahead, Ms Kaplan believes a generation of baby boomers is being left behind.
If they've been in a relationship for 10 or 15 or 20 years, sometimes it becomes easier to cope with what you've got than to walk into the dark unknown and change everything in your life that's been comfortable and secure.
And if becoming aware is the first step, Ms Kaplan says taking charge is the next.
Women have to realise that they need to put a value on themselves, that if they turn themselves into a doormat and lie down, somebody's going to walk on them.
Melinda Smith, NBN News.
It was a Newcastle Council meeting with a difference. Mayor John McNaughton started by reading a document called the Hunter Commitment to Indigenous Australians.
Newcastle City Council acknowledges and agrees with the loss of Indigenous people of their land, their children, their health and their lives.
Organised by Koori's Council and the Newcastle Aboriginal Support Group, the short document describes the hunters' understanding and empathy with what Aborigines have suffered over the past 200 years. Councillor McNaughton and Aboriginal elders June Mason and Charlie Richards signed the document in front of 50 people. It is the first such commitment to be signed at any level of Australian government, but its purpose is not political.
We're asking people to commit themselves to racial harmony and justice, and it's important for the Aborigines to know this, that they have support.
And support was definitely shown for young Aborigines at Rothbury today. A hostel catering for 16 young Aborigines was open to provide wayward teenagers with accommodation and to teach them vital social skills.
It gives them a home base to get their lives together.
Kooris aged from 12 to 16 will be sent to Googadar, meaning wilderness and enchantment, for up to a year at a time. It is hoped the centre will break the cruel cycle of youngsters living their lives in and out of institutions. Jason Neuenhoff, NBN News.
As the school term winds down, these students from Lake Macquarie's Southern District are ending the year as high achievers. With proud parents and friends looking on at a ceremony at Wangi, 180 were honoured for their efforts in schoolwork, sporting and cultural activities. For some, today's award will be added to their collection. Each student has already gained recognition at a regional, state or national level. Meanwhile, another presentation was made at the Lake Macquarie Educational Resource Centre at Spears Point. In all, 14 recipients were recognised for their academic excellence, service and exceptional leadership. They included students, parents, teachers and principals. Marking the Year of Indigenous People, a special award for outstanding leadership and academic achievements was presented to Morisset High School captain Peter Homer.
Shannon Taylor and Spike Cheney claim they've had enough of the Americans doubting their ability and want them to match their wallets with their mouths.
Got nothing to lose then. If that's the way they see it, I've got nothing to lose and everything to gain. So, they just make me fight just much more better than normally. I'll just dig deeper.
And while the Yanks are happy to throw a few words around, cash is a different matter.
We really can't afford it. It ain't that we have any doubts that we're going to win, because we don't, but you know, anything can happen in boxing. You know how boxing is, and we need the dollars for Christmas. You know, we have kids and we can't take that chance.
And although they're thinking of their folks at home while they're training, Lewis Masonette and his trainer have asked Bill Morty if they can stay and base themselves in Australia. The fighters also healed a few wounds within the Aussie camp. A few years ago, Spike Cheney and Shannon Taylor wouldn't have even stayed in the same room. So strong was their dislike for each other. This fight, though, has smoothed over the rift and they now train together.
People around us were causing a little bit of animosity between us, but me and Shannon have always been friends. It's just that, as I said, people got between us and were saying things, and I feel that that's what the problem was. And me and Shannon are good friends, so now we're just back together.
Ticket sales have been consistent for the bout at the Newcastle Entertainment Centre, and if it sells well, promoter Bill Morty says a Kosh Jiu world title fight in Newcastle isn't out of the question.
The concert marked the culmination of a 12-month program which aimed to raise students' awareness of their environment, particularly local waterways. Every primary school in Gosford City took part in this year's campaign, embracing the theme Bring Back the Dolphins.
Gonna bring back the dolphins to the Brisbane water, every son and daughter, 'cause we know we ought to.
It's a tremendously exciting theme. Testing our water quality, testing our marine life.
Several students received awards for their commitment to the program, with the Environment Minister saying he was overwhelmed with the enthusiasm the students showed throughout the year. He says it's crucial for young people to have an appreciation of their surroundings.
It's a hands-on environmental program. I mean, you can have all sorts of environmental programs which are just education, and while kids respond to that, they need to feel that they're doing something too.
Students created artwork and implemented environmentally friendly schemes during the year, which Mr Hutcher hopes will shape their future attitude towards the environment. Jenny Crouch, NBN News.
The proposed sale of the State Bank is set to become a major political issue. In Newcastle today, opposition leader Bob Carr was quick to point out the effects the sale could have in the Hunter.
I think 400 employees at the State Bank in this region would be asking themselves today whether their jobs are safe.
The state government will try to sell the bank next year. Mr Carr says the sale price should be around $1.5 billion, but claims the government has plans to sell it for as little as $400 million. Mr Carr believes the bank, which recorded a $75 million loss this year, should be retained and nursed back to financial health. He says in all cases, privatisation results in job losses. A similar scenario is being seen with the Commonwealth Bank, which the federal government privatised earlier this year. Nationwide, the Commonwealth Bank hopes to cut 8,000 jobs, or 18% of its workforce. In the northern region, which stretches from the Hunter north to the border, 14% of existing jobs will go. In people terms, numbers will fall from 1,207 to 1,058. The bank is now reviewing its middle management area.
That an agreement is finished. We then have to meet with the blokes with our individual contractor. We'll have finished an agreement to take to any order.
It'd be very difficult to get anything sort of different than that.
Birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Anna. Happy birthday to you.
Hip hip.
Hooray! Hooray! Hooray!
enjoyed with your family and friends at it.
But they're all here today for you.
Yeah.
Never been under before. Cut the cake.
Oh, dear, I'm trying that.
There's 82.
I was married to Jack. I was married 63.
Showery weather conditions did little to dampen spirits for today's parade. More than 40 organisations were represented in the extravaganza, which meandered through a number of city streets. Hundreds of people lined the Heritage Mall in Maitland Shopping Centre to enjoy the show of Yuletide spirit. You couldn't help catch the Christmas feeling, with these youngsters certainly putting you in the mood. Santa Claus appeared in many guises during the event, with many left to wonder whether the jolly bloke had taken up self-defence or fitness. The traditional values of goodwill to all weren't forgotten though, with 3 wise men making an impressive appearance. As December gets a quick step on, Christmas Day is now exactly 3 weeks away.
By 9 o'clock last night, Gilbertson Street, Essendon was a disaster scene as emergency services and locals joined forces to rescue the survivors. Just minutes before, the plane, a restored twin-engine de Havilland Dove, had taken off on a scenic dinner flight from nearby Essendon Airport. Heading south at lost altitude, clipped a power pole on Keilor Road, then thumped across the rooftops of 5 houses before jackknifing on its side in the front yard of number 16 Gilbertson Street.
I heard a noise and I thought that plane's low, so I turned around and looked and I saw it heading straight for the pole and I said, oh my God, and then it hit the pole and then it just sort of bounced along over there.
2 workers in a nearby pizza shop raised the alarm and ran to help.
I ran straight down there and when I got there, the pilot was already out. The pilot was out of the plane. He just had a cut above his ear here.
We ran down and started pulling people out of the plane. I was carrying people to the ambulances.
All 10 people on board the plane were treated on the footpath for cuts, broken limbs and shock. A resident walking by at the moment of impact also received treatment. A fleet of ambulances ferried them to 5 Melbourne hospitals. Most of the houses were occupied at the time, but only 1 elderly person required assistance. Bureau of Air Safety investigators began their work at dawn when the full extent of the damage was revealed. Of the 5 houses hit, 2 suffered severe damage. One man, happy to read about it in the morning paper, was Theo Castricum, a survivor who was seated behind the pilot.
We're about 200 or 300 feet up. And then all of a sudden the engines, like I thought, why is he pulling back the engines? It's like they were idling. And then all of a sudden we were going across the tops of the houses and I said, I'd hate to be living down there if this was going on every night. And then the next thing I knew, there was people coming inside the plane, including the captain, trying to pull everybody out. They pulled the guy behind me out and then I was able to get out.
Today, the former Australian Airlines captain was recovering at home after being discharged from hospital. His pride and joy, the Dove, was cut to pieces and loaded onto a truck for further investigation. The Bureau of Air Safety says it could be weeks before the cause of the crash is known.